This-
Hello? Hello? Oh, great. Did my internet just crap out? Are you serious?
Something immaterial, some kind of transcendent thing.
The fuck? The actual fuck?
Yeah, yuck, you know, I can't do it. And people got killed and they're forced to join the Navy and had to fight terrible naval wars and they all died like flies. And
Yeah.
I never know whether I'm online or off. So please.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
we're
yeah.
online.
Hold
I
on.
think
Everything
more or less what I
that you've
wanted
just
to
been
say.
saying has been.
Yeah.
Hello. Everything that you've just been saying, unfortunately, just because my stupid, accursed internet just cut out, everything has just been lost. So if both of you could sort of get the audience up to date on everything that has happened in the conversation ever since I dropped out of it, which is literally since the moment you came out, John. Please, like, just recant everything for the audience and just continue the conversation where it was going.
Well, I haven't really said much. I was just, I basically, like, I haven't come in to say, go on some, like, hour rants about religion or whatever. I just came in to do, like, a 5-minute rant about, like, my frustrations in this sphere of, and, like, talking to different people about, you know, nationalism and white identity and things like that, and how it's so, like, taboo, and, like, it frustrates me that it's such a simple concept, and it's so necessary to, like, have European civilization, and, like, if we don't have it, we're gonna do a death spiral basically, like, and, like, it's just, like, shut out completely, and and it's just so frustrating, man. Like, it's especially frustrating because it seems to be, like, uniquely shut out, whereas, like, other forms of nationalism aren't as shut out.
Yeah, I think that's probably because I think your women, you know, don't want you to talk about your stuff, but you know, they don't feel it quite so threatening if other men of other races and other nations talk about, you know, their stuff, because, you know, basically white women rule the world, kind of thing, and, you know, and Hillary Clinton nearly became president. So
yeah, but it's like, who let them, you know?
Yeah, and you know, and finally we got Trump, and
men have agency.
Yeah.
So
No. The
we
thing
need
is,
to take agency. White men needs to take agency and, like, check the, like, feminine imbalance of, like, you know, be accepting to everyone and completely accept all outsiders. Like, there needs to be boundaries that are, you know, healthy.
yeah. And in the UK, there was this proposal by feminist campaigners to make misogyny a hate crime. You know, it's like I think they sense it now that the tide is turning against them, and they feel they have to put all these laws in place to shut up the criticism. Apparently, the police said, well, we don't need that, but you know, you can tell why they wanted that law because I think a lot of people know that nationalism is also linked to feminism. You know, in that, you know, patriarchy is the basis of any kind of leadership that could defend the national interest and give voice to the male preference. And I mean, I've been saying that lots, and I hope that I am understood, because I try to say it as briefly as I can. But you know, I don't know. But I think increasingly a lot of the alt-right know that is to do with feminism. In fact, of course, they do know because they go on about white Sharia. But the mainstream alt-right don't want to have anything to do with that. But yeah, fundamentally, it's about, well, no-fault divorce, making it, well, easy for women to divorce men and take half their stuff and, you know, deprive them of their children, which is very demoralizing. Which for some reason men campaigning against feminism won't talk about. They don't seem to want it. Probably because they're too demoralized to want to get married again, I guess. But,
I guess
yeah.
I will agree with you in the sense that, like, women, like, kind of the manosphere talking points are correct in a certain way, and I think, like, feminism is a huge problem, but, like, I think it's like a multi-pronged kind of attack on Western man. Like, it's not just feminism, it's capitalism too. It's like different civilizational forces clashing with European man, and like our fundamental, like, spirit being destroyed by these, like, as Duvid would say, like, these greater forces. And it's like we like, it's almost like we have to fight like an ideological conflict on all fronts to win this thing.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned Duvid, because that reminds me of Deuteronomy 28, and there's a section on, you know, blessings for obedience to God's laws, and then after that is curses for disobedience. And I found it very interesting, because it was just saying if you disobey God's laws, you know, you're going to be cursed, and you'll be cursed in the following way. And it does mention the foreigner, and this punishment obviously applied to Jews, because, you know, Deuteronomy is from the Torah, and the Torah is you know, addressed to Jews. So it's basically something that happens to everyone if you're okay with fornication, because, you know, when you're okay with fornication, it means that you won't marry, or you won't stay married, and your children will be awful, or not as good as you, and not as good as their grandparents, and I guess foreigners will notice that you're being divided and weak and stupid, and they'll come and take your stuff and boss you around, and it describes in you know, terrible detail about what happens to you when you go down that route. And, you know, I guess feminism is all about fornication, because men are, you know, primarily motivated by sex, and if they can get sex without marriage, that's how they'll do it. And now it's acceptable not to be married before you have children. So and of course now you can, you know, be gay and marry, and you have equal status to people who are actually you know, spending money to bring up kids on their school fees, and you know, it's not fair, is it?
Right.
So the right people are not being encouraged to do the right thing. So few of them will, and then you have trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you have some interesting analysis there on the gender stuff. I would say I probably disagree with your like solutions in regards to Islam, because I view that as like a foreign religion, and like it hasn't been a part of European history for a long time. I do see where you kind of find that to be the solution, because it has clear set rules and all of that sort of stuff. And there's obviously forms of Islam that are not like Wahhabist or whatever, you know, crazy, like blow shit up. But,
yeah, I mean, you have crazy Christianity too. I mean, it all depends on the interpretation.
It depends on the context.
Whoever interprets it will, I mean, I guess it's a function of power anyway. So you just make sure the right people interpret it in the right way. And that means you have to be eternally vigilant. Or, you know, it's like the First Amendment. It is being eroded. American politicians seem to daily flout their own constitution. So maybe we shouldn't be that surprised when Muslims over the centuries have distorted and ignored their own religion. And maybe Jews also ignore their own religion. I think they do, because, you know, it's only after I've studied Judaism was that, you know, they think they are the chosen people and they are the light of the nations because they, and it's like, but what do you do for us? And actually, they're supposed to be quite right-wing and remind us about things like patriarchy and stuff like that, but they don't, do they?
What is your view? Do you have like a Nietzschean kind of analysis of Christianity? Like, what is your view of, say, like the Crusades, and like that was obviously a display of like European unity and patriarchy under a Christian sort of civilization with Europeans. Like, how do you explain that?
Well, I mean, I suppose you know, the Chinese come from an old empire, and they know that, you know, mean things are done, you know, in the name of God, and I believe that the Crusades was sort of prompted by a population explosion of you know, younger sons with no property, and they thought, well, we'll just take the stuff in the East. That's what we'll do, and that was easily done, because, you know, when you have a lot of young men, you can make them do stuff for you by, you know, making them seek fortune in foreign lands and take other people's stuff. So, so I think that was, why it was done primarily, and and even before that, people would use their gods to fight each other. Like, my God is better than yours, or if it's the same God, I am more in favor with our God than you are because you've done all these bad things. So, God is basically just a weapon of war and an instrument of government. And it's like, why don't we use it? It's already there. We don't have to spend money, and all the laws, to me, seem fair enough. They seem, reasonable to me, that we should be kind to each other, not steal, not commit adultery, and protect our interests, our national interest, all of us in our respective countries. But obviously this threatens America, the American imperium, because it officially doesn't have an empire, but of course really it does, and it Britain is one of its vassal states, and so, but it's breaking up now.
Right. I was gonna say, so what is the fundamental, I guess, reason that we couldn't revive, or not even revive, just bring back like authentic Christianity? It still exists in like pockets. I mean, you could argue that certain like Spenglerian declines have been happening since like the beginning of time, where civilizations rise and fall and like new ones are born. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to adopt the civilizational cult like substructure of a different people entirely.
Well, I think it's basically because Islam is a more advanced version of the Abrahamic faiths, because it has no, it's unashamedly saying, yeah, of course we're going to follow these laws in the Quran because God made them, and obviously we should follow them. And Christians, why did you have to separate your church from your state? Was it because you were all doing such terrible things to each other? Christian on Christian religious persecution, the European wars of religion, the Reformation, and hundreds of years of fighting between Catholic and Protestant, and then the Pilgrim Fathers ran away from that Christian on Christian persecution, and then in the New World they persecuted each other. The Puritans against the Quakers, and they did terrible things to each other. So this principle of religious freedom is was kind of, it wasn't an afterthought, because they did do terrible things to each other, and I don't think maybe a lot of Americans don't know that part of their history. Apparently, I haven't read Nathaniel Hawthorne, but I know that his novels talk about this sort of Quakers being persecuted by the Puritans. It's quite a complicated
the question
history.
is that inherent to Christianity, or is that like an aspect of religion that is kind of universal? Because like you could see the same kind of infighting in Islam, where like there are these like extreme conflicts in the Middle East, like highly tribalist, and they end up actually not even having like freedom of religion. So it actually could be argued like Christians were like a more tolerant people, and like you could argue that's what led. Yeah, and that you could argue that that's part of what led to their downfall, but like you could also argue too much of the opposite can also be a bad thing.
Yeah, but basically, it's not a good idea to compare, how Christians are doing now to how Muslims are doing now. I mean, you go straight to the source, which is Scripture. So, I mean, having read the New Testament, it seems to me nothing more than a bunch of vague stories that don't make that much sense, and a few extremist statements. So actually, a lot of these rules that people think came from Christianity, in fact, came from the Talmud. I mean, even love thy neighbor is from the Old Testament. You see. So the New Testament, if you try to read it, it doesn't have that many rules. So basically, all the rules come from the Talmud or the Old Testament, but Islam kind of I mean, they admit to going to Judaism if they're not sure about something. It's like, well, what did the Jews used to do, and we'll follow that. So the stoning of adulterers thing, that came from the Talmud, and then even the throwing gays off tall buildings came from the Talmud, probably because other people even then couldn't bear to stone gay people to death. So they thought, well, it's just less icky if we just push them off a tall building, and that's what they did, and that was what ISIS was got that from. So it's okay. So what I'm trying to say is, the Quran is better because it's written more clearly. And if you're very vague, like the New Testament, it just means that people who are supposed to follow it will just argue that it means this, oh no, it means that, and maybe it means the other thing. And so there was a lot of fighting amongst Christians. And, to the extent that, when they got rich, they just wanted to reject the whole thing. They didn't really believe that Christ was God. I mean, I know lots of Christians who say, I don't really believe in it. I mean, I might sort of stretch my imagination and think that God might exist, but I certainly don't believe that Christ is also God and is co-equal.
But
so,
I think I was just going to interject and say, I think that's more of an aspect of modernity than something inherent to Christianity.
Well, anyway, but the Jews used to say, I mean, I guess then it got beaten out of them that Christians were in fact practicing idolatry. Look at them praying to a man on a stick. Look at them praying to a woman holding a baby. And it is true that Catholics used to talk, to pray to Mary. So you can't sort of deny that it is idolatrous, and so while Jews and Muslims are supposed to think of God, this ineffable, indescribable, supreme spiritual thing that created the world, Christians would think of themselves as talking to Mary or Jesus, which I don't know. I don't think it's quite right. But there we are. So, but anyway, because Christians were in the majority, they could easily kind of, beat the crap out of anyone who questioned their religion until eventually they no longer believed in it themselves. And I'm afraid, this is where we are now for Christians. The Archbishop of Canterbury a few years ago, he said something that made me think he doesn't even know he's supposed to believe in that. And you can find it in the newspaper reports. So he was saying, sometimes I doubt God's existence, but I really believe that Christ existed. And I thought, that's so dumb. That's so dumb. Nobody's really denying that Christ existed. And he's talking in this, weird, non-Trinitarian way that shows he doesn't know what he's really supposed to believe in. So it made me think that the Pope probably doesn't believe in it, but he knows that to hang on to his job, he's got to pretend that he believes that Christ is also God. And
So
you can't
let me
base your
just
religion on a lie
question-
that nobody believes in. I'm sorry, what did you say?
In terms of your I guess critiques of Christianity, I guess I'm better understanding that. So what would you lay out as the Western alternative? Like you say, secular Quranism, is that correct? And you would interpret it based on what you believe to be the best, basically, right?
Yeah, I can only interpret it in the way that I want to interpret it, because there's so many schools of interpretation, and I guess I would say, and the most important verse for me would be chapter 2, verse 256, which guarantees freedom of speech and freedom of belief. And that would be the point I want to emphasize, because everybody thinks, oh, you're going to close down all our synagogues and all our churches, and we'll all have to be Muslims and prostrate ourselves. And I say, no, it's not like that. It's just a legal system. You go to your church, you go to your synagogue, you worship and think of God how the hell you like. But, there are certain laws of the land that you have to follow.
In terms of,
and that's
can
it.
I ask another question? In terms of how pragmatically this would happen, I basically look at this, and you're basically telling us that there's this religion coming in, they have some good ideas, and basically like we should, because they have good ideas and they're invading us, like we should flip it on them and use their good ideas on them. Whereas like I actually think the way to counter the civilizational invasion, or war, or whatever you would call it, clash of civilizations, is to assert our own historical religious identity, which is Christianity, and take out all of the like modern crap parts of it, and throw that away and go back to like what used to work, which is like Thomas Aquinas and all those people.
Okay, I mean, where I'm coming from is that you're only having to put up with immigration because Western men are not organized. They're not in charge. They're not in charge of their families because they're estranged from them mostly. So they're not in charge. And the only way to get in charge again is to restore the patriarchy. And the only way to restore the patriarchy is with the laws that you're going to change, like abolishing no fault divorce, slut shaming, because otherwise,
right. And you would argue that's connected to secular Quranism, but like let's say that's true for the sake of argument, right? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it also be true that that would be pretty demoralizing to Western men to say like our whole 2,000-year basis of philosophy is essentially messed up, and we just have to listen to like what these other people have written out in Saudi Arabia?
Well, not necessarily. It's like look, the Chinese did that. You know, the Chinese did that. Eventually, they hated it. In 100 years ago, and there was a lot of fighting. It's like, damn, our empire has fallen. Damn, our weapons are crap, and the European traders are just shooting at us and telling us what to do in our own country. And eventually it fell into chaos, and that was a civil war, and the commies took over, and they have a one-party state. They're Marxists. They took their ideas from a German. So it's like, when the crunch comes, that was what they did. And now they're far better off than they were before when they had their emperor. So, and obviously it makes sense because, if you have a one-party state, then all the political talent, they know where to go. It's a one-stop shop of political talent. You want to be in politics, you join the only party in town. But if you're an emperor, you're relying on your extended family to replace you. And
I'd say the difference is, though, is we have had patriarchy in the past, and it's been well sustained by Christianity under certain pretenses, right? And like those pretenses aren't being met today because we've like essentially changed the doctrine with like Vatican II. And like basically like the whole religion of Protestantism is basically like a whole change. And like if we just had like Orthodoxy and Catholicism, like that, I mean that would be fine enough for me.
Yeah, okay, but you're saying, I guess you're Catholic or an Orthodox Christian. So what you're saying is everybody go to church on Sundays, and everybody say you believe Christ is God, and things will be okay. But it won't be unless you change the laws to punish, to shame sluts, to make people marry and have children and stay together for the sake of the children.
Yeah, but that's built into the religion. Like that's a part of it. Is like don't be a degenerate. It's like that's a part of traditional Catholicism and like Orthodox Christianity.
Yeah, but then it's not being followed because. Yeah, I think you just sort of need to kind of re-emphasize these points, and also a lot of people say, yeah, okay, we'll obviously not fornicate and won't divorce each other frivolously. But can you not force us to go to church on Sundays? And then because it's a pain. Just say what the laws are. We'll obey it, and don't make us go to church, please.
Right. Well,
so
the purpose of like a high IQ, like Christian European society, is that men have free will, so they have the choice to choose to sin and be evil or not. And like not going to church is a sin, and that's evil. And if everyone else was a Christian, they would view it as such. And so it's like the only thing that we have to do basically is we have to go through some pain, and then like once we go through some pain, we'll go back to our traditional religions, and then those rules will be reinforced rather than switching to something we haven't followed before.
Yeah, I suppose in theory, I mean, you always want to go back to what you had before, but people also kind of think, oh, we don't want to go back to that. We want to try something new because it seems, more efficient and, whatever. I mean, there might be people who think that because it's like, well, we tried it and it failed us, so obviously it doesn't work. So can we try the new thing, please? Can we try the new car, the latest model? Rather than repair the old banger, and then it probably won't be repaired properly, and it'll still, break down when you're somewhere between A and B. So there will be, schools of thought thinking we just want the more efficient, effective, easy maintenance one than the old one. So,
right, but I still doubt that that's like Islam, because like I could see Islam breaking down also. Like Islam actually breaks down a lot more than Christianity does.
Do you think so? In where?
I think in terms of like history, like they haven't built as many they've built great empires, but just not as many, and like generally they function at a lower civilizational level. And like they aren't able to sustain their golden ages as long as like Christians have.
Well, I suppose we probably don't have the big picture. Maybe you're just watching a race and you're only seeing a part of it, and you're not gonna we're not going to be around to see the end of the race, and we certainly weren't around to see the start of it. And so all we can do is just make the most rational decision on the limited information that we have, and obviously we have to take public opinion into account, and I think it would be kind of annoying for people who don't believe in it to be forced into church when they say, all right, we'll obey the laws, can you just leave us alone now? And you say, no, you got to go to church. You got to, and it says long and boring service, but you got to go and stay there and give up your Sunday for this. And even that might swing the balance between people who say, well, no, we'll just obey the laws, just leave us alone, because we want to do our thing at our weekends. And maybe a lot of people who call themselves Christians now will say, yeah, okay, I never liked going to church anyway.
I guess here's my final point, is that I see where you're coming from. However, what's to stop, hypothetically, let's say all of that's true. I don't necessarily think that, but let's say all of what you said was true. What is to stop like secular Quranism from suffering the same fate as Christianity? You said that there are clear laws, but like laws can always be basically subverted, because there are pretty clear laws in like the Bible and the Ten Commandments, yet those basically got subverted.
Yes, well, that is the thing. I mean, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance, and most of the time we want to fall asleep, or just pretend something isn't happening when it clearly is. So we can only lay down the law and hope that people will follow their tradition and remember the stuff that they're supposed to remember. And there's some, there'll be schools and parents and communities to reinforce those lessons. And we can only do that by marrying, creating families and communities, and obeying the rules, and so sometimes hating our spouses because we think we married the wrong person, but sticking with them, out of a sense of duty and resignation. I mean, the English used to say, "Oh, I made my bed, I've got to lie in it now, even though I made it, like crap and it's not comfortable." That they usually use that when talking about, the person that they married, that they're bored and irritated with, probably because they knew that divorce was to be stigmatized, and they can't easily get out of it because no such thing as no fault divorce existed. So they had to grit their teeth and stick with their original choice, and and stay together for the sake of the children. And maybe in the end the happier people, because eventually when you're old and still together, you think, oh wow, I'm used to him, I'm used to her, and our children aren't so bad, and it would have been terrible if we remarried and had more children, and our children and stepchildren didn't get along, and then these families can be very complicated. And anyone who's sort of had anything to do with anybody else with baggage, it's painful and uncomfortable and difficult, because really we wish the person we married had never had any children, and we wish them away, unless in time we grow to like them and they grow to like us. But it will always be difficult having to deal with. I mean, it's difficult enough dealing with your own kids, let alone somebody else's who's sort of determined to hate you. So, when the rules are clearer, we, I think, are more settled, because we think, oh, it's either A or B, not A to Z. And if it's A to Z, we think after choosing something, I'm bound to have chosen the wrong thing, and I'm full of regret. Maybe I should have chosen the other thing that I didn't choose. And so, these things also cause mental illness and confusion and doubt. And doubt is actually a very distressing emotion. I think some have said it's more distressing than loss itself, because you're just going on, shoulda, coulda, woulda, what do I do now? And, so make the rules easy for people, because most people aren't that clever, and even the clever people get angry and confused too. Okay, I'm legally trained, so I kind of work in a rule-based sort of way.
That's all right. Talk very technically and lay it all out.
Yeah, I'm often accused of being binary, and I thought, well, there was a point to the binary code. It's to make the computer do something, and you can't say maybe, and then never do anything.
What are you guys talking about?
Christianity versus like Islam, and the merits of like creating a civilizational structure.
Seems like to me like Islamic civilization is not quite as stable as Christian civilization, or at least European Christian civilization. But that's just my take on things. Seems like Islamic societies have a lot more like revolutions and like instability.
Only because the CIA keeps destabilizing them.
What's the CIA?
The CIA. I mean,
the CIA.
No,
but even like in the past,
destabilizing everybody's civilizations.
Yeah. Right. That might be true. I'm actually gonna. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, my final word, and then I'm stepping off here, is like, I guess what Claire is getting at is like, if anything is left unclear in Christianity, it's that the laws need to be spelled out clear, I guess. But I think they're spelled out pretty clear. We have like the Ten Commandments, and we have lots of Christian philosophers who have tried to lay this stuff out. But if that's true, then I guess we just need more. We just need more of it laid out simply. And I would say, ultimately, it's probably going to be easier for us to go back to our traditional religion than to go to a different form of religion. And that's why I'm against pagans too. But I respect the traditionalist values that you have, Claire, and I understand where you're coming from. So we have common ground there. Anyways, I'll see you guys later.
Bye.
All right, let's talk about secular Quranism. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't actually stay on for too long. I just wanted to hop on for a sec.
Secular Quranism. Sorry, Levi, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I was just saying that I'm at like 5% battery, and I'm pretty much always, because I always talk at the end of the day, so like my battery's drained, so my battery's always on the verge of death. Sorry about that. That was it. Hello?
Sorry, Jakey is spurking out so hard in chat right now.
What's he saying?
It's just like I'm getting really distracted just because he's like ranting about like his woman problems. He's like,
Damn, Jakey.
oh,
Jakey,
gosh.
Jakey, you should think about women less and think about improving yourself more.
Yeah, no shit. It's like that's what
Like-
men in general need to just stop thinking about women as much. Fundamentally speaking,
Yeah.
it's like the more you think about women, the less good things with women will go in your life. Generally speaking,
I know how Jakey's gonna reply. He's gonna be like, "But yoga pants and shit." It's like, yeah, I'm exposed to yoga pants all day too, but like, I don't know. You have to just learn to restrain yourself. That's part of maturity. Learn to resist the yoga pants.
Claire, do you think yoga pants should be banned?
Right. Why does he want to ban them? I don't get it.
I want to ban them because it's degenerate.
Yeah, I do too.
Like, I actually support like the whole idea of like, oh, you know, women need to like sort of cover up in the public square, or else men will like sort of become lustful and become possessed by their animal base sort of instincts. I completely agree with that. I mean, as much as it sounds like it removes agency from men, I mean, it's just practically it's realpolitik vis-a-vis gender. So I think that it's a good move, civilizationally speaking, if you want to have a civilization that, you know, just sort of stays intact and doesn't have everyone just constantly trying to have sex all the time.
Oh, you're saying you like them so much they're distracting, or you hate them because they?
No. Well, I mean, I hate them. I mean, well, the point is, it's just like it's black paint, basically.
It is.
You know, it's like black paint. So what it is basically a proxy for nudity. So it's a question of modest garb. And I think that modesty is something that should be striven for, because otherwise men will become like possessed by their id.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
And
yes.
You know, do
it's
things
just,
like,
just
you know, and do things that are like degenerate, like try to talk to a married woman or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, men need to be protected from their own urges, and I guess that's what modesty is about. It is about protecting men and stopping women from showing their
Totally
power.
agree. Totally agree. Yeah, men need to be protected from their own urges, fundamentally speaking. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's funny because so many people have come to this universal truth from so many angles. Like, you could look at it from sort of like a religious traditionalist perspective. You can look at it from like a feminist angle, but like from all the different angles that have come to it. I mean, I think that is kind of men do need to be protected from their own urges, and that's something that I've learned my entire life. Now, Jakey, on the other hand, has probably been like completely like alienated from his own urges. So I don't know. Like, as you were saying in the chat, he said like his problem is like, as opposed to too much id, too little, which was my problem largely. He's saying too little id, which I think is.
I don't know. Yeah, I think women won't give a shit about you like until you've like gotten your act together, until you've sorted yourself out. So, Jakey, you should work on that first. Hello? Anyone there?
Hi. Yeah. I was just thinking.
Oh, sorry. I was just making sure.
I thought you were talking to Jakey, and I didn't know what to say, and I'm not really sure what he is trying to say. Some of the time, sometimes he seems quite nice to me, and other times he's mean, so I can't work him out.
Yeah. Shit. Well, I'm gonna get going again. I just wanted to just jump in for a sec to say a couple words, but yeah, it's getting pretty late here. So have a good night, Claire.
Okay. Good night. Good night, everyone. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Hello. So I'm really sorry about that. It seems as if my Hangout just sort of unexpectedly crapped out. My Google Hangouts on my phone, and I was having a bit of internet problems after that. So anyway, yeah. Jakey. Good morning, Mr. Fay. Jakey, we can do a private hangout actually right now if you're interested. That might be quite nice. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching. Yeah, the stream's just sort of at, I think, its logical conclusory point, considering in the interim period when I was going from my phone to my computer because my phone died. Seems like Claire, Khaw, and Levi Shoshan have left in the meantime. But anyway, thank you very much everyone for watching, and it has been an absolute pleasure streaming. It's been a very interesting night, you know. Interesting vibes, a bit more laid back, a lot more dead air since, like, I think there were at least 2 people smoking weed on my previous stream, my initial stream. But aside from that, it's been a very interesting conversation. So if anyone's interested in seeing any channels of the participants, Duvid, you can follow him, Reb Duvid, on Twitter, and that's Duvid with 4 O's. Claire Khaw, ClaireKhaw. You can check her out on YouTube. You can check her out on Twitter. And let's see, who else? Levi Shoshan and the other participants in the Hangout don't have channels, but you can look at... I'm just going to thank them. Thank you very much, Mr. Mitch. Thank you very much, Mr. Shoshan. Thank you very much, Mr. Duvid. Thank you very much, Mrs. Khaw, and thank you to... I think there was one other thank you very much to Judah Starchai 250 for joining us. Yeah, it's been a great conversation. Thanks again. Hijab swimsuit is real.